What is money? What does one of these mean to you? What would you trade for one of these? Most likely you trade your time for a handful of these every single day. In this episode of the show, I'm going to take you through the sinister beginnings of LIV Golf. How money is driving an egotistical, toxic man to try to create his own self-fulfilling prophecy with his hatred of the PGA Tour. It started from the very beginning, and he always thought it would be easy. This is the story of LIV Golf and Greg Norman. Greg Norman was born in Queensland, Australia, to Mervyn and Tony Norman. Norman, in his early days, was an impeccable surfer. He had outstanding balance. He taught himself to read the wind and the waves and balance on the surfboard. Little did he know at the time that these skills would make golf a perfect sport for him to play. Fast forward to 1970, Greg Norman, at 15 years old, goes out and plays golf with his mother. He thinks to himself, I could play this sport if my mom can play it. And that's where it all started. He picks up a golf club. He starts playing golf. What happened then was a radical transformation. He went from a 27 handicap to a scratch golfer and practicing for 18 months, unheard of, and then rose quickly through the junior ranks of golf. This would set a really important lesson for Greg Norman's life. Although he did work hard at golf, most things came natural to little Greg Norman. Going from a 27 handicap to a scratch golfer and rising through the ranks so quickly. When something comes super easy to you at a very young age, you assume that everything in your life is going to be that way going forward. What would happen in Greg Norman's PGA Tour career, which is well documented, is a lot of heartache and a lot of losses. And especially a lot of losses in the United States, where he has never won a major tournament in the United States. So we're going to fast forward this story to a 1994 meeting that Greg Norman brought to the PGA Tour of America. And this is really where his grudge against the PGA Tour and Tim Finchem started from. So before we talk about the 1994 meeting, let's talk about what it takes to be on the PGA Tour and who is granted access to the PGA Tour. So the PGA Tour has 175 plus or minus some exemptions, full members of the PGA Tour. 175 members. People that rank from 125 to 200 are able to play on the Korn Ferry Tour, where you also earn money and you can be granted access back into the PGA Tour. So it's a complete meritocracy. The players that make the big money at the top, it all trickles down to the bottom. If you make the cut, you are given money. And now the PGA Tour has implemented some things where there is some guaranteed money given to players, and that's there to help them with some of their travel expenses and things like that. In late 1994, the number 2 ranked player in the world of golf, Greg Norman, dropped a bombshell on the golfing world. In partnership with Fox, Norman announced that beginning in 1995, there would be a new tour on the block. The 8-event schedule, boasting a total purse of $25 million plus a $50,000 travel stipend, and a $1 million bonus to the Player of the Year, was Norman's attempt to globalize the game of golf. He called it the World Golf Tour. At least that was the claim. Criticism of this World Golf Tour was almost instant. Namely, that Norman was trying to steal the top 30 players in the world. Sound familiar? Plus another 10 who would be offered sponsor exemptions. And his proposed event schedules were going to be in direct conflict with the PGA Tour. The other major criticism was that Norman was greedy because of the large purses he was claiming, as well as the shared TV revenue players on the WGT would get. Remember, the largest first place prize for a tournament in 1994 was $540,000 at the Tour Championship. One writer wrote, "This World Golf Tour does only one thing: make Greg Norman richer and his ego bigger." The WGT, as it was going to be set up, would guarantee any player a minimum of $290,000 per year based on last place earnings of $30,000 guaranteed. First place for all events would be $600,000 plus the travel expenses, stipend, and TV revenue sharing. In 1994, that was a nice prospect. In a November 17th, 1994 article for the Washington Post, Thomas Boswell wrote the following: WGT's for stars-only format would strip bare the fields of established events such as the Kemper Open and detract from major events such as the U.S. Open. It's no accident that the WGT plans events for the weeks before the Tour's 4 majors. Potentially, the World Golf Tour, if it ever really comes into existence, could throw golf into an ugly, balkanized era of tennis-like chaos. Think of the strikes in baseball and hockey, then think of golf, ripped by litigation, bad blood between rival groups of players. So Greg Norman had a great idea. Start a World Golf Tour. Greg Norman always makes it as if everything he is doing is very innocent and not very well thought out, and that he has the best intentions. What he doesn't ever do is listen to the facts or the results from the other side. Listen to this quote from Norman in 1994. "The PGA Tour wasn't out there understanding what global golf was doing," he said. "They were focused on growing domestic tournaments, and I thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could still play in our 15 tournaments in America and we could grow the game globally during the tours we'd play on the World Golf Tour." Now that may sound very innocent, but what would happen in a players-only meeting at the Century 21 Championship where a 65-year-old Arnold Palmer would map out what a World Golf Tour like this would mean for golf itself? Palmer told all the players that the big three, him, Jack Nicklaus, and Gary Player, had been approached over and over again by different groups wanting to pretty much pluck them off of the PGA Tour, and they would pay them large sums of money to play on a tour by themselves, and then they could just pretty much handpick the guys that they wanted to play with them. There's a big reason why they never did this. So, as I laid out earlier, the PGA Tour is for everybody. It's not just for one guy to make $30 million that wins every week, seemingly. Palmer knew this. News of this tour had reached the PGA president, Tim Fincham. Fincham had previously worked as a lawyer, and he worked in the Jimmy Carter administration, so he knew how to politic, how to foster relationships. He went player by player, expressed to them what it would mean for the PGA Tour if they were to leave. And he also used the pension plan that they had in place for the PGA players, handsomely rewarded pension plan that anybody can buy into in any type of business. Fincham was able to foster those relationships. This is where Greg Norman's biggest downfall was, and it still is to this day. He doesn't know how to value relationships over money. What happened in 1994 upended Greg Norman. He thought he was the one who had put in all the work. He was the one who was ranked #1 in the world for 331 weeks. He was the one who should be in the driver's seat to make the decisions on the PGA Tour. But instead, a 65-year-old Arnold Palmer stands in his way, tells everybody that this will be the root of all evil. It will be the end of golf on the PGA Tour as we know it if we separate everybody out like this. But Greg Norman didn't listen to anybody. What happened after 1994 became a grudge that would live inside of him, and he would sit and wait for his opportunity until 27 years later he found that opportunity in LIV Golf to upend the PGA Tour, to get back at Tim Fincham, and to get back from the PGA Tour what he feels like they stole from him, his idea. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this content, subscribe to the channel. I had a great time making this video. It's a little bit different than some of my other videos. Everything in this was from readings I did on different websites or from Greg Norman's 2006 book called The Way of the Shark. But I had a great time making this video. Until next time, stay classy out there, golf fans.